I remember somebody once when I got to Singapore, they wanted to start a company with me. And so my friend introduced me, they wanted to start a company with me. And he showed up to the coffee place in a Ferrari. And when he pulled up in the Ferrari, I was like, nope, it's not for me. Nothing wrong with people with Ferraris, all good, whatever. Not my people, right? I wouldn't drive a Ferrari. Okay, I don't know if I can afford a Ferrari, but like I wouldn't, even if I could, wouldn't drive a Ferrari. Not a thing that I care about. And so even something like that was just like, I just had kind of like a different kind of like take on like what I would kind of like want, right? And so to me, that was like an external, internal motivation thing. I think I talked to some people, and it's like we're like talking about. Sometimes it's like when you talk to the people who you're thinking about kind of starting companies with, and you can kind of see where the conversation goes. Like I've had some conversations with people where they're like, we're like talking about I'm a product guy. Like I want to talk about the problem. I want to talk about the users. And I remember talking to some people when they're like, they're just talking about who we could sell to later. I'm like, yo, we don't have a user yet. Like I'm not starting a company with anybody that talks about who we're selling it to. Like, and to be kind of clear, Brian and I have actually never had that conversation. Even when we've sold companies, we like didn't have the conversation until like it came up. And so I think there's just these things where you're like trying to get a feel for like what these values are. And the thing that I kind of always dig into is like, why do people do the things that they do? So like, if you're looking to start a company with somebody, like you should ask them, like, why do you want to start a startup? Right? Like, why do you want to do this? It's kind of a horrible experience, if I'm being honest, right? And it's like, it's brutal. So like, why do you want to do this? Why is this interesting to you? Like, why do you want to work on this problem? I think ask a lot of the like why questions and why people kind of do it. And I think that will be quite helpful.
Thanks, Vikas, for that. Yeah, I think that kind of like touches on the like shared value thing as well, quite a fair bit. Luke, do you have any experience with this? Red flags that, relationship might not work out, things you feel like people over-index on?
I think red flags definitely is motivations. Like the why is very important. Like if you're, I remember when I was in university, I was thinking like, dude, I'm gonna be rich, I'm gonna be a billionaire. If I had known like how tough being a founder is, you would realize like, dude, you cannot be motivated by money. You cannot. It just won't work. There's no amount of greed that can make going through hell worth it. It's just not. Of course, I like the great points about being a founder, but the why has to be there. If you're meeting with someone, they're like, I want to be rich, I want to like be my own boss. Then you're like, okay, this person doesn't understand what it's actually like to be a founder. It's not what they think, right? And sort of having that clarity of expectation is very important. Like you have to be able to manage people's expectations.
Or like one will come full time if they get funding or whatever. That doesn't work. That was a red flag to me on all kind of co-founder relationships. I would never start a co-foundering relationship with anybody that was like not equally kind of like committed, unless there's like very like there is some kind of good reasons for this. But like on the most part, it's kind of like if they're your co-founder, we kind of like leap together. We should kind of like want to be able to take the same level of risk. And so I don't know if that's like a uniform rule, but that's something that I hear some people kind of like talk about. They're like, oh yeah, my co-founder will be full-time as soon as we get funding. And I'm like, yo, that's not your co-founder is what I think in my head. Right. So I don't know, actually, Victoria, Luke, do you guys agree with that? I guess that's like a thing that I've always had in my head, but I don't know if do you guys agree with that?
Victoria, you go ahead. For me, it's definitely a yes.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, they could have the reasons. Maybe they want to save some money until they come in full time. But I think it's also a mental thing, right? If that person is always half in, half out, his or her mindset will kind of always have that, okay, I have a safety net, so I don't have to go all in. I don't have to put all my effort into this. And sharing your brain capacity, you're thinking about your startup 100% and this person's just giving you 10%. It's not fair to you either. So I think no matter what the reason, I know you said they may have the reason. I think there should be no reason for you to jump in with someone who isn't with you the whole way.
Like there are a couple of like edge cases where I think it's okay. Like for example, you just quit your job and you have to serve out your notice period. You can't work like full time.
Sure.
But even in those cases, I think there's still a way for you to work full time. If you have to put 8 hours at your job, then what are you doing with the other 16? Like fine, you sleep and eat and whatever, right? But like if that person is working as hard as you are after working hours because like they're done with their job and then they're like gonna leave their job and like join full time, I think that's okay. I think it's less about like what state or how much hours they're putting in at the start for those edge cases. But generally speaking, yeah, you both have to be all in. Otherwise, is there like a way to prorate their equity or something? I don't know if that even exists.
Yeah, and I think I was going to bring that up too. It's just a very odd conversation. Like I'll tell everybody right now, Brian and I we've made the same commitment for every company, and we split the equity 100, like 50-50 straight all the way through, right? And that's the cleanest way to do it. It's like we both leafed at the same time. It's like if I'm full-time working on a startup and Victoria is my co-founder, she's doing it part-time. I'm like, okay, so is that 50-50? Because if it is, then I probably will resent her a little bit because I'm like doing this full-time and she's like getting this other thing. And then if it's not 50-50, then it's like Luke said, it's like, okay, how do we prorate this? And like, and like longer term, even if you prorate this, it's like, okay, Victoria was been working on the startup with me for 5 years, but because she took the 3 months before to kind of not do it, now she has half of the equity of mine. Like, I don't know. So it's just like, it's like complicated, And so I don't know. I've just always liked structures that it's like everybody's in, everybody splits it. Like, we kind of like move on from there. And having looked at the cap table of all of the startups that we invest in, the vast majority are people who've like committed at the same time. If not equal, then it's at least like very close to equal. We sometimes see like 4951s, that kind of stuff, but it's like very close. And we do have some prejudice against investing in companies where everybody's a co-founder, but like one co-founder has 5%. And we're like, not really a co-founder, right? So anyway.
Trial period that P and I did when we were looking for a CTO during the time. We did some kind of mini project with this potential CTO where it's like kind of envisioning how we're going to build it and all that. And this person seemed like he did not have any interest in the beauty industry, and was not willing to kind of even talk to our customers, like go to a salon, and he was just not willing. So I think even just that small test, you can already see, okay, even if he could probably build a product, but he is not willing to do anything to learn more about what we're actually trying to do, then that's a big red flag. So
maybe just one thing to add on to Victoria's part about like not talking to kind of like customers and like that kind of stuff. Maybe first of all, if you're a founder, you should be talking to customers. I don't care where your job is. And so this is like a very kind of like straightforward thing. The other thing that I would kind of say here is if you're looking for a co-founder and you're kind of like looking at stuff, co-founders tend to be people who are like kind of willing to do anything, right? And so a red flag to me is like, if I was talking to somebody about being a co-founder and they're like, oh yeah, I want to be a co-founder, but I don't do X, Y, and Z, I'd be like, don't know if we're going to be co-founders then, right? Because co-founders are like, the co-founder that you're looking for is the one that's just like, what do we need to get done? Cool, I'll do that. And if you ask them, do you know how to do that? They'll be like, nope, but I'll figure it out by next week, right? And so I think there's like an attitude piece here that maybe kind of like Victoria is touching on, where you just want to get a sense of like what kind of attitude they have towards work and kind of like, do they have kind of like a growth mindset or not? If they say they don't want to talk to customers, not going to be the right one for you. If they're like, I don't want to do sales, not going to be the right one for you. Like founders need to be able to and willing to kind of do whatever it takes kind of in the early days. They don't have to be good at it, but you need to kind of be willing, right? So maybe that's like another piece to add.